All right, welcome in, welcome back. We are back live on the Andre Duke Show. As the thumbnail says, Lane Kiffin leaves town. They hire Golding as the permanent coach. I didn't think it took Keith Carter that long to make that decision. A lot of stuff going on with on the Lane side of things. The trolling's back. I think that for all intents and purposes, a lot of the stuff went kind of how I kind of thought it would. As more and more of the details leak out about the people that are really close to the Lane Kiffin stuff, I think it's interesting to say the least. Also, we'll do kind of a deeper dive. I'll give my thoughts on the Lane Kiffin stuff here in a second. But for the most part, I kind of feel like Mark Stoops out at Kentucky after 13 years, the longest tenured coach in the SEC. Very, very interesting to say the least. Stoops gone. I find it interesting. So there's that. John Summerall hired at Florida. I think that is a positive thing there. Maybe Florida can turn around some of the stuff that's has been working against him or working against them. That's just kind of some of the stuff that kind of helps it equal out. And it's very fascinating to me on how this whole situation played out. I think that I can't say that Kiffin made a bad decision, but nor can I say he made the best decision. He made the decision he wanted to make. I think the kids at Ole Miss, it is what it is. Ever since pretty much the middle of the season, since James Franklin, well, not James Franklin, but more so since they fired Billy Napier in Florida, it's been a nonstop media circus, to say the least. Do I think that Florida was going to fire Billy Napier this year? Yeah, I think Florida was firing Napier no matter what. They just wanted to find the right time to do it. And John Summerall kind of set up pretty good, I think. They have a fairly decent infrastructure. They had to hire somebody that was going to come in there and put the pieces back together, regardless of how it kind of fell apart there at the end for Billy Napier. That's the big thing. So you have that. Also, the phone line's open. Number to call, 260-255-4069 is the number to call. So as we dive in deeper on the Lane Kiffin stuff, also, while I got you here, if you could do us the biggest favor and hit that like and subscribe button. But I guess we'll finish up with the Kiffin stuff, and then we'll dive into this week's games, last week's games, what went good, what went bad. Obviously, Texas A&M having that disappointing loss to Texas. I thought it was their one time that they could have broke out of the shell and claimed, something for themselves, and they just couldn't quite get it done. Marcel Reed had turned the ankle, and some costly penalties. A&M didn't have the best execution, but also they're going to the playoffs, and I think it's absurd that Sark at the end of the game was doing they should take into account for all of the things that we've done. We went 6-2 in the SEC and another loss to Ohio State. Well, Sark, they're not putting a 3-loss team in, man. They're just not going to do it. They're not going to get into that they're not going to get into that side of it, to be honest. So there's that. We'll continue on with the coaching stuff, but yeah, Stoops out at Kentucky. I don't think anybody's shocked by that, to say the least. I don't think there's a ton of people shocked. I think also on some of the other coaching stuff, Coastal Carolina, I guess, is making a change. So there's that. Also, we have the big conference championship games coming up: Indiana, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, BYU, Texas Tech. Also, a lot of stuff out there swirling around. Kalani Sitake, I guess, is getting some smoke with Penn State. I don't know who decided to push that narrative, but very, very interesting. No mention of Matt Rule. I didn't think they were getting Rule from the beginning, but that's just my opinion. But also, Ole Miss hires Pete Golding, head coach. We'll see exactly where that turn takes Ole Miss. But on the Summerall Napier comparison, they both were at the G5 level for 4 years. Summerall's record 42-11, Billy Napier's record 40-12. He was 27-5 in conference. Summerall is 28-4. One score games, Billy was 16-3. Summerall is 15-3. In bowl games, 1-1. Billy Napier was 2-1 in bowl games. So there is that. Very interesting stuff. Sorry, I apologize. But there's that. Billy Napier, 2 Sun Belt titles. John Summerall, 2 Sun Belt titles. 5 years apiece in the SEC against top 25 teams. 1-4 and 2-6 for Summerall. So there is that. So that is the comparison. I don't think anybody's going to get super. The Florida fans seem like they're kind of out on the hire already. I don't know. But the American posted a graphic today thanking Eric Morris and Ryan Silverfield, also hired at Arkansas. The American got rated for coaches this off season. So that is kind of what is going on. Also, number to call, 260-255-4069. We'll get into the weekend that was, but I think I pretty much covered all the coaching changes. That's what I'm looking for. See if I missed anybody. So there is that. Making sure I'm just checking my list. Alex Golish comes over from South Florida at Auburn. Summerall, Florida. Kiffin, LSU. Pete Golding, Ole Miss. UCLA hires Bob Chesney. I did think that was interesting. The Sun Belt and the American kind of get rated. A name that I'm surprised that hasn't moved yet. Dan Mullen hasn't accepted a job or been offered a job or been linked to a job. I was kind of on I think he is Penn State's backup plan. I think Urban Meyer pitched him pretty hard, but we'll see. But I'll be fascinated to see what Eric Morris does at Oklahoma State. I think that is very fascinating, to say the least. So that's kind of all the coaching stuff for the most part. And if you guys want to call in and talk about Kiffin, I'll offer my thoughts on it. I just feel like for everything that happened this year at Ole Miss, it's kind of the most Lane Kiffin way to end it, to be honest. The fact that it just didn't work out and it ended in a complete and utter dumpster fire. It's just kind of one of those deals. Also, Pat Fitzgerald gets a job. Fitzgerald ends up at Michigan State. So there is that. The Arkansas fans, I don't know. It's kind of lukewarm on the Ryan Silverfield stuff. I mean, I guess I don't get the Silverfield hate. I know the people at Memphis were expecting more because they have a ton of money in NIL budget, but I just don't think for what it is, it's realistic, in my opinion, when it comes to the Memphis Tigers football program. But I think he did the best he could with what he had. Also, it doesn't help that Penny is the basketball coach, and I'm sure Penny Hardaway gets what Penny wants. So there's that. We'll look at some scores from over the weekend. Also, phone line is open. Number to call, 260-255-4069 is the number to call. We'll go. Where are we? Oh, yeah. So there's that. Some of the other notable games, Georgia Tech ended up being kind of a slobber knocker. Ole Miss rolls in the Egg Bowl. Lane Kiffin's last game, very interesting. Indiana puts an absolute thrashing to Purdue, and then A&M goes down to Texas, which makes it's really tough that A&M lost that one. They kind of just Marcel Reed didn't have the greatest game, but Texas busted him up on the ground. That's really where A&M struggled, was rush defense. Texas ends up with like 218 yards on the ground, averaged 6.23 yards a carry. And A&M turned it over twice. So I think that giving up a lot of yards in the run game, a ton of yards on the ground, and then turning the ball over twice. Those aren't conducive for winning football. I know some people would probably disagree with me on that, but it's kind of what it is. Those are some of the compelling things from Friday. Saturday kind of gets a little interesting, to say the least. Also, Will Stein, Oregon's OC, is the new coach at Kentucky. We'll see how that works out. Kentucky, very fascinating on all sides of it, to say the least. Also, Monday Night Football getting ready to kick off. Probably we'll get everybody out of here early tonight. So there's that. One of those deals. Clemson ends up beating South Carolina. Tough times down there for Shane Beamer. They end up losing 14-28. Clemson kind of puts it to them, to say the least. I know they had players on the field dancing after the game, so kind of what it is. Clemson rolls off into the season 7-5. South Carolina falls to 4-8. There was some speculation on if Beamer was going to take the Virginia Tech job. I think he got offered it first and said no and decided to stay at South Carolina. And I just feel like that South Carolina vastly underachieved this year. I don't know what the Gamecocks are going to do. A lot of speculation around Dylan Stewart and Lanella Sellers. Lenora Sellers. Sorry for the punctuation dip. So, but Sellers played really well. I think he's going to get paid in the portal. I know South Carolina fans ain't going to like that, but he's going to get paid in the portal, to be honest. I just don't see how he stays at South Carolina. I think Beamer just needs to probably completely retool and rebuild it from the ground up, but they'll give you enough time. But I don't really know what South Carolina looks like as far as NIL budget. I know they're paying Sellers and they're paying Dylan Stewart a ton of money, which those are their probably two best players. I think Horton looked outstanding as well at times this year. So there's kind of that on the South Carolina front. Colorado falls to 3-9. I think that if it looks like this next year, I think Colorado makes a move in all seriousness on the Deion Sanders thing. I think I wouldn't be shocked if the numbers were correct. If I can get those pulled up on his buyout, the way it is structured, is just reading the details from ESPN. In March 2025, Colorado Buffaloes gave Deion Sanders a 5-year contract extension worth $54 million, locking him in through 2029. So his contract wouldn't be up until 2029 at the end of that year. Under that deal, his base salary starts at $10 million in 2025 and remains at $10 million, and then jumps to $11 million in 2027, 2028, and it goes to $12 million if he makes it to the last year, which who you fooling there? So on or before, this is the terms of the buyout. If Deion Sanders voluntarily leaves, takes another coaching job, aka before the end of the contract, he will owe Colorado $12 million. So there is that. I think the buyout, but that is if he leaves before December 31st. So after the first of the year, if he leaves during 2026, it's 10 million, 6 million. It progressively goes down. But that's if he voluntarily leaves. So he's got to pay them if he decides to step down for health reasons. If Colorado would fire him without cause, withstanding, they would owe him roughly, as of December 1st, they would owe him $33.265 million if they were to fire him. That buyout figure ranks among the highest in the top 20 in college football. So there is that as well. So, but on the other side of it, I think that buyout goes down significantly in 2026. Let me see if I can find it. That's what I'm trying to find at the moment. So yeah, so there's kind of so much that the buyout progressively goes down year after year, but in 2026 they're going to pay him $1 million more, and they're just coming off of a 3-win season. So as I say to the fine folks in Colorado, good luck. That's just kind of where it's at. And they end up losing to Kansas State 14-24. I think that we'll see what Colorado looks like after the transfer portal. So that's just kind of what I'm looking at. I think the exclamation point on Stoops came in the Louisville getting smoked, or Louisville smoking Kentucky. Kentucky ends up at 5-7 this year. The last couple campaigns for Mark Stoops haven't really been the greatest. Last year 4-8. Year after that they were 7-6, 7-6, 10-3, and a 5-6. I think that was COVID. But each year they beat a ranked opponent. Kind of what it is. I don't necessarily know that. Will Stein, I say good luck to you, fine sir. I don't know how it's going to pan out for you there at Kentucky, but maybe getting a youthful, energetic guy in there, sometimes a new voice in a new direction with a new program, sometimes maybe turns things around. Also, other notable games: Miami, Pitt. Miami crushes them. So we'll see where Miami shakes out in this whole thing. It's going to be a very, very interesting argument. I think there's going to be a lot of Tulane versus Miami stuff going in, and with where I'm at on it, I think that Vandy, or not Tulane, but I got confused there. Miami versus Vanderbilt, all the Miami versus Vanderbilt stuff. I think that it's going to be interesting. I think Vanderbilt has a better resume. And I know the Notre Dame stuff's going to come out, but the issue with Notre Dame is I get it, Miami beat them head to head, but if you roll down Miami's resume, they have a loss to Louisville, loss against SMU. It's kind of what makes it tough on Miami, and then their body of work is not impressive, because when you go down the Miami side of it, they beat Notre Dame. Great win at home week 1. That was August 31st. Congratulations. Although Miami had looked good all the way up until Louisville, and I don't think they've looked the same since Louisville. So they beat Notre Dame at home. Miami crushes Bethune-Cookman. They beat the hell out of South Florida. They beat Florida bye week, beat Florida State bye week. And then they come out after 2 of the last 3 weeks they haven't played. And they played, a close one with Florida State, which that's bizarre. Florida State, I think, has some funding issues, because I think if they could, they would get rid of Norvell. But I know that's unpopular around some circles, but we'll see what they do there, because Norvell fired both coordinators last year. And typically after you fire both coordinators and it still don't work, they normally remove you. So there is that. But yeah, Miami's wins. I mean, they killed Stanford, lost to SMU, beat a corpse that was Syracuse. NC State was kind of a corpse this year. And then you have Virginia Tech and Pitt, Whoop-de-doo, Basil. I don't see it. Also, another notable game. Ohio State takes down Michigan. Michigan going to miss the playoff this year, ending up 9-3. Their year is done. Probably going to be playing in the Gasparillo Bowl or whatever bowl. But I think, some of the positives, I think that if you're Michigan, that you can take away from the whole losing to Ohio State. I get it. You don't want to lose that game. Ohio State doesn't want to lose that game. It was kind of close, rolling all the way up until, the end of the first quarter. Michigan's on top, and then Ohio State comes back, scores those 2 touchdowns, and I believe it was 17-9 going into halftime, and then Ohio State comes out, scores a touchdown, and kicks a field goal, and that's 27-9. That's how you get there. But, Ohio State comes out 409 yards passing to Michigan's 163. Or no, that's total yards. Sorry, total yards. Bryce Underwood comes out 63 yards passing. That's it. Julian Sand, 233. Bo Jackson had himself a day, 117 yards rushing. I think Ohio State is a juggernaut to be dealt with in the playoffs. I also think Indiana, we're going to find out about Indiana again. I know some people hate that, but it just is kind of what it is. Other notables, as I'm looking through there, tough year for Brian Vincent and ULM. I think he got a bunch of guys poached. Oklahoma ekes it out against a battered LSU team. Washington gave Oregon a game. Arkansas falls to Missouri. I think a lot of stuff around Eli Drinkwitz has gotten quiet. So there was a lot of rumors about him going to Penn State. So I was really shocked that Penn State did not try to hire Pat Fitzgerald. That's who I would have hired. But instead, Pat Fitzgerald goes to Michigan State. But I also am not really shocked that Michigan State fired Jonathan Smith. I'm not going to say it was a quote-unquote bad fit, but what I will say is I don't think the fans liked him ever since he showed up for Oregon State. I don't think a lot of the Michigan State people were skeptical to begin with, and then when you couple that with not winning, they'll just call it a bad fit. That's just kind of what people do. Like they would say, "Oh yeah, Nick Saban fits in at LSU." No, I don't. Not culturally wise, but he won there, so he fits in. Same thing with Lane Kiffin. It's the same thing. Anywhere. Like Tennessee's myriad of coaches. Oh, he was a bad fit. How about you just say he didn't win enough? Why can't we just say that? He didn't win enough. Same thing with Jonathan Stewart. It had nothing to do with fit. He just didn't win. Penn State has not made a decision. I'm wondering if Penn State's going to try to hire a coordinator that his team's either playing this week in the conference championship or he is going to the playoffs and they're trying to keep it under wraps. So there's also going to be a ton of movement at the G5 level as well, because you're going to have some guys staying behind to coach bowl games. You're going to have new guys showing up. It's just going to be a mess, because I don't know how I guess I would have to make a call on it, but I don't know how the folks that are, let's say you're the current Penn State staff. Let's say they hire a coach tomorrow that we'll just call it Pate State University, and they got a bowl game coming up. Well, the top guys are the key people that need to go and get the program set up. they've got to leave while the others stay back and coach the bowl game. That's what puts the group of 5 teams, I think, in a bind, because let's say you go to a bowl game, half your staff is still going to be at Pate State coaching the bowl game while the other staff is at Penn State or Arkansas or wherever. So, because you can't ask the interim coach to come in there with, basically no bones and be like, hey, coach the Gasparilla Bowl. You know what I'm saying? It's just not schematically going to work. Although Jared Parker at Troy had himself a year. Ended up 8-4, and Charles Huff. I was shocked Charles Huff was not linked to more jobs. I think Charles Huff does a really good job, because if you look at Southern Miss, if you look at Southern Miss, last year they were 1-11. Year before that, 3-9. And then they were 7-6 in 2022. But the last 2 years they had fallen on major hard times, and I was really shocked that Charles Huff wasn't getting major consideration. Probably a lot of it has to do with who your representation is. And like, if he would have had Jimmy Sexton as a client, he would be getting leaked to Penn State. He'd be getting leaked everywhere. That's the engagement farming that Jimmy Sexton does. Well, allegedly. But, I mean, these names don't come out of thin air. I'll just say that. But Penn State still needs to make a hire. We'll see where that shakes out. And the longer Penn State waits to make a hire, the longer and longer it's going to be for James Franklin to poach your recruiting class. He's already taken 4 and 5. He took 4 guys in 5 days after being named the coach. What do you think it's going to look like after he's the head coach for a month? So I'm just saying, Penn State, you better hurry up. That's all I'm saying. So other notable games. Also appreciate all the new folks in here. I'm just going over the weekend that was. I know Lane Kiffin's on the thumbnail. If you want to call in, go ahead and get your call in. Number to call, 260-255-4069 is the number to call if you want to call and talk some Kiffin stuff. But where was I at? Let me find it. Okay. Vanderbilt, Tennessee. I think the Heupel stuff is ridiculous. Just the straight up Josh Heupel slander is ridiculous, in my opinion. The people of Tennessee, I think he salvaged the season 8-4. You lose your starting quarterback in the spring transfer portal window. Like, what do you want him to do? He's literally making chicken salad out of chicken shit. So that's kind of where it's at. And Vanderbilt, I think, has their first 10-win season in school history, and it'll be a huge, huge to-do if they do not get in the college football playoff. I think Greg Sankey will probably pull what Harry has left out, and I think in the spring meetings, Vanderbilt will have a big beef about this, and it's something that's got to be talked about. And that's why I feel like the SEC as a whole wants to use their conference schedule, which is going to be 9 games next year, as their resume. They want that to be their resume. I mean, it's going to kind of put a pinch on some of the small schools for the bye games, but you'll have to see how the schedule's formatted. Also, I think, Dan Lanning taking a cheap shot about the way the schedule's formatted. It's going to be interesting. Also, the ACC championship game is kind of a dumpster fire, if I had to say. That's just kind of my opinion on it. But it's Duke and somebody else. Now I'm curious, because I was looking through my notes and I had the Duke score in there. But all the conference championship games for next week, and then also Auburn, 2 fumbles in the last 3 minutes of the game just killed them in the Iron Bowl, to be honest. There's nowhere else to sum that up. Alex Golesh, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of speculation that DJ Durkin's going to get retained, so I think Golesh has somebody that's there, and I think probably this will be DJ Durkin's last year at Auburn. I don't see, if anybody moves on in the SEC, I would say he'll probably be considered to be hired. I would say the hot names next year to look at probably will be, I would say it's probably going to be DJ Durkin, and I think Charles Huff is going to get some steam. I'll have to check in to see who represents him, but if he ends up signing with CAA, Jimmy Sexton's agency, Charles Huff will be all over the place, and everybody's going to be like, where did this guy come from? So there is that. Also, Friday night on ABC, you're going to have Tulane and North Texas battling it out for the American Conference Championship. Tulane is a underdog, North Texas minus 2.5. I would have to look at see who's left on the Tulane coaching staff. That's the problem with these hiring a group of 5 coach, because 9 times out of 10 you're going to be trying to hire the coach that's probably going to the playoffs. So there's that. Summerall off to Florida, Eric Morris off to Oklahoma State. So I don't know, between the people left in the building, you probably couldn't put both programs together and equal one coaching staff. Maybe, I don't know, but have to keep an eyeball on that one. And then at noon it kicks off. On Saturday. You got Texas Tech taking on BYU, which we've already seen that matchup. Texas Tech beat them like a drum. I would say that will be the lone Big 12 team that gets into the playoff. Virginia, if Virginia wins this, they win the ACC. I think it didn't get talked about enough. I think Tony Elliott did a heck of a job at Virginia. If he wins the ACC, I would suspect he'll be on that short list next year as well. If he can have a repeat year, 9 to 10 wins, Tony Elliott possibly could be on the move. So there's kind of that. That is a 8:00 kick. And then the 2 big heavy hitters of the college football world, Alabama, Georgia, 4:00 SEC championship in Atlanta. That is going to be a slobber knocker. I'm sure Kirby's licking his chops to get another shot at Georgia, or not at Georgia, but at Alabama. I can probably guarantee you that, because some of the way the last meeting turned out, I'm sure that they want another shot. The Dogs do. So we'll see. We'll see where that whole thing shakes out. I think that's going to be a compelling game, storylines wise. We're going to have that on streaming. We're going to do a watch party for that. Georgia 2.5 points. I think it's maybe a 1-point game. I don't know if they're going to have anybody really pull away, but you never know. Sometimes upsets happen, man. And then the Prove It game. And then we'll get everybody out of here. I appreciate all the new people that have joined in. Also, if you can do us the biggest favor, hit that like and subscribe button. And then I'll close it out with some Lane Kiffin comments, and we will get out of here for the night. Also, Richie will be on the program tomorrow. Last but not least, the Big Ten Championship. Indiana comes in at number 2. Ohio State 1. This is a very fascinating game, to say the least. Indiana, if they come out and win it, can prove a lot of people wrong. Some people are still calling Indiana frauds. It's a 4.5-point spread. I think last year when they played Ohio State, it was 9. This is virtually a home game for Indiana, with it being in Indianapolis. I expect a ton of Hoosier fans there. I expect a ton of Buckeye fans there, and it's probably going to get contentious. I know one Penn State super fan is going to be watching that game closely. So there is that. And then the following week, Army-Navy, America's game. The Naval Academy takes on Army. Haven't quite made up the mind yet if we're going to stream that. Like to hear some feedback. If you've made it this far in the program and think we should do a watch party, Army-Navy, would that be something you guys were interested in to round out the college football regular season? Just throw something in the comments, wire in. Appreciate you on that one. And then after Army-Navy, we get into the playoffs and bowl games. So we'll get to the bowl selection stuff coming soon. Also, that Sunday after the conference championships, the playoffs will get revealed. I think typically what happens on Tuesday will most likely, I don't see much of a change on Sunday. I think they just might swap some teams around. That would be the big one for me. I think that'll happen. So there is that. That's pretty much what we got left. We're coming to a close on the college football season. It's been a good one, an interesting one. The first year of it. So I guess we'll close with some Lane Kiffin, some of my Lane Kiffin comments. I look at the Kiffin stuff. Oh man. I look at the Kiffin stuff and I say, if Lane really wanted to go, he should have I don't know if he could have gone about it any better. Well, he could have done a lot of things different, but as far as the mechanics of saying whether I'm staying or going would have been, I think, a more digestible if it wasn't so publicly done. Typically, that's what happens whenever you leave town. It turns into a big old mess. And Lane Kiffin won huge at Ole Miss, won, I believe, over 50 games in 5 years, almost 10 wins every year he was there. So it took shots out on the way out the door. The Ben Garrett Ho stuff. I think Lane memed himself whenever he did that. You're going to see tons of Ho shirts wherever they go on the road. The only thing I really have to say is that you can't lose like a game like you lost the year before with the best roster that you had at Ole Miss to Kentucky. You can't do it. I think that, there's a lot of emotion that went into it. And at the end of the day, Lane Kiffin has to do what he feels best for Lane Kiffin. I think the Marty Smith angle of it, ESPN's role that they played in it, I've heard several people comment about the College Game Day stuff. I've heard Neil Chase give their comments, Tyler Siskey give his comments. I think that sometimes when you do some of the things that Lane did going out the door like the last month, if he would have just privately said, hey, look, guys, I'm out of here. I'm sure the players are not happy about this. I feel like they probably think that Lane should have stayed to be with the team, and all the storylines that were with this team. You have the Trinidad Chambliss angle. You have Kewan Lacey that probably will be a Heisman candidate. You have all of those positive storylines. Also, they had a player murdered before the season as well. So looking at it through all the things that team has been through this year, and then for Kiffin to come up and say at the end of the year after the Egg Bowl, like, deuces, fellas, I'm sure the players feel like they got a slap in the face. There's the airport video out there of all the fans booing, flipping him off. He can't be upset about that because he knew it was coming. And we got a big old brouhaha on the Giants sideline. Jackson Dart takes a massive hit going out of bounds. People getting separated there. Wow. I mean, Dart took a huge hit on the sideline. But speaking of Lane Kiffin, so there is that, and I guess my thing is that Lane, if it don't work out, I don't know where you're gonna go. It turns into a deal that it doesn't necessarily. Sometimes the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Also, the Ben Garrett stuff is it is what it is. But at the end of the day, though, I think Ben Garrett was right the whole time. I think Neil McCready was right. I think a lot of the guys that covered the team that I listen and follow their shows, and they're professional reporters, and they were right at the end of the day about the Lane Kiffin stuff. I think that's where the fans have too much emotion in it, and that's just what it is. And I'm not trying to do the whole bash Lane Kiffin thing, but I did think the Ho comment was funny. But Ben Garrett was right. Neil McCready was right. And I get it. A lot of times those guys that work in that profession, their hands are tied and they can't tell you everything that they want to. But I think Neil made the comment that after the Georgia game, he was kind of out. And I went back and watched that press conference. It kind of felt that way after he had said that. I thought the contentious press conference after Florida, the Florida press conference when they won big against them, I'm like, yeah, I think he's out. So that's kind of when I, gathered it, came to the realization. It's like, yeah, I don't think Kiffin's going to be here next year. So that's kind of where we're at. We'll have Richie on tomorrow, a myriad of topics. So we'll see how the Kiffin stuff plays out in Baton Rouge. Also, the LSU people have won the press conference, but at the end of the day, you can win the press conference, but it's all about what you do post press conference, to be completely honest. And we will see, but I guess we'll go ahead and end it there. I know everybody wants to go watch Monday Night Football, so there is that. Be back tomorrow. Richie will be joining the program 7:30. Got a little bit of a late start tonight. Apologize for that, but if you can do the biggest favor and hit the like and subscribe button, we will appreciate that here at the show. Also, back tomorrow action-packed weekend, Big Ten Championship, SEC Championship. Phone lines will be open for both games. They'll be open all game long. So if you want to call, get your call in, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow. Have a good evening, everyone.